And joining us now to dive into what this ruling really means is federal defense attorney and constitutional law expert Ronald Chapman. Ron, thanks for being with us. The question really now becomes this: what is official and what's unofficial? And knowing the language and the parameters here, does it paint a roadmap of what needs to be done in order to be protected going forward if you're the president?
The case does, and Chief Justice Roberts was very clear about this. While the case is remanded to Judge Chutkan in order to determine whether or not Donald Trump can still be tried and what are considered official or unofficial acts, Justice Roberts gave some indication of the court's thoughts on that, and in fact issued some rulings related to that. The case is separated into about 5 different allegations against Donald Trump. The false slate of electors, communication with folks in other states to get them to overturn the election, the lawsuits, the claims of elector fraud. All of those issues were discussed by the Chief Justice in the opinion, and he was able to parse out specifically the court's thoughts on official versus unofficial acts. The end result is there are some things that are going to go forward, but it's important to note that official acts will not be able to be used as evidence in the criminal trial, and they will be severed ultimately from the criminal trial in this case, leaving not.
So let's dig into this just a little bit more. We talk about, let's say, the Hatch Act. I've literally had congressional staffers have to end a conversation or call me back on a different line because we move from official business to talking about a campaign. Where does that fit in here?
That's really difficult to interpret. Well, first, Donald Trump isn't charged with a violation of the Hatch Act. That may be a different analysis because the allegations might specifically relate to a campaign as opposed to other duties of the president. Here, what we have is a case that is intertwined with official and unofficial actions and a very difficult time parsing out the powers of the president. Now, here's the important thing to remember that the Chief Justice is kind of burdened by. If he declares something to be an unofficial act or not an official act, it will be that way forever until the Supreme Court speaks, which means it's taking presidential power away each time he declares that something is not the act of the president. Judge Chutkan is going to have the same problem. When she issues a ruling about Trump's actions, she will be declaring those official or non-official acts for the foreseeable future until something changes, until there's a later ruling related to that.
But here's where I bring up the Hatch Act, because if you are President Trump on the ellipse, and we go back to January 6th, where is the argument to say he was acting in his role as the president and not as a candidate trying to get the election results overturned?
Well, no, I understand that completely. And I think that if you're making calls to, let's see, I think one of the biggest pieces of evidence in this case is going to be the calls to folks in Georgia. I believe that there was the get me the votes sort of statement that was made. That's going to be certainly an exhibit that Jack Smith has. And Judge Chutkan will have to determine whether that is considered an official or unofficial act. And certainly the Hatch Act, in terms of the way Congress intends it to be, in terms of the way Congress intends presidential power to be, will be an important indication that, generally speaking, campaigning is not within the scope of the presidency. However, ensuring a fair election would be something that the executive would be empowered to do, and that's what Chief Justice Roberts mentioned when he was talking about some of the election challenges and those being the acts of a president. So very difficult to unravel here.
There's so much to unravel. I have so many questions. We don't have time for all of them, but I've heard so many analysts really disagree today about what this means moving forward, what might be considered official, what might not be, and how Judge Chutkan decides. At the end of the day, though, what this court has demonstrated is that everything is open to interpretation, even things that were once considered law of the land or settled. So even if we land on the definitions of official and unofficial, are those definitions solid going forward or open to future appeal?
Well, as a trial attorney and somebody who's been before courts in D.C. and all across the country, I can tell you exactly how this is going to play out. It's going to take at least a month, if not more, to get this case down to Judge Chapman. She will then have the ability to hear additional briefing from the parties, because judges don't just make decisions in a vacuum. Those issues will be briefed. Counsel will make arguments as to what is considered an official act, and then she will likely issue a written ruling, which will likely be appealed up to the D.C. Circuit and potentially the Supreme Court.
Okay, Ron Chapman, federal defense attorney. I could talk to you for an hour about this, but we are out of time. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.